There's a lot to say, about what's going on right now. There's a lot going on. So I'm just going to jump right into it here. There is no job that I would undertake with more passion than bringing our people together around an agenda that works for every man, woman, and child in this country, rather than the corporate elite and the 1%. A progressive agenda that stands for all is the way that we transform this country. Senator Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Woo! Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Norman. I am a community connector for the Bernie Sanders grassroots campaign and a volunteer organizer for Mendocino Coast for Bernie Sanders. On behalf of myself, Mendocino Coast for Bernie Sanders, our wonderful hosts, where's Faith? There she is. Our wonderful hosts and the larger Bernie Sanders campaign, I want to thank you all for being here tonight. I want to welcome those of you who have come that are not quite full supporters, but are maybe just a little bit Bernie curious. We are certainly glad to have you here. All right, we have gathered here tonight out of a shared desire for positive change and a belief in the leadership of Senator Bernie Sanders. We seek the type of change that this movement represents, and we seek to further it. Now is truly a momentous time. We have the exceedingly rare and exciting opportunity to vote for a candidate that we actually believe in. I do not find myself choosing between the lesser of two evils.
Nope.
We have a chance to actually vote for what is good and just and necessary, and not just what is against what is reprehensible. Excuse me. But this time we actually can do both. It's a 2-for-1.
Yeah, 2-for-1.
Yep. So, we have an exciting and rare opportunity to change the face and the function of the Democratic Party to the left. As Bernie says, the issue is whether the Democratic Party has the guts to stand up to the corporate elite. And if we don't have the guts to do that, if all we can do is take their money, then we should be ashamed of ourselves. What is the point of a political party? Self-preservation at all costs? Or is it representing its constituents? If given the chance, should we not strive to be better? Should we not fight for the enhancement of society? Should we not work together to create a more perfect union? We have the opportunity to exert the type of positive influence on our society and on our culture that is so desperately needed at this time. Bernie Sanders has specific plans that we must educate ourselves and each other on and spread the word about. Plans that will have profoundly positive local, national, and global effect. A true leader discovers that which is good and leads others to it. One deeply necessary good, for example, is his plan to get corporate money out of politics.
Yes.
As stated by the campaign, in 2016, just 17 donors gave 3/4 of the total Democratic National Convention funding.
Criminal.
With large corporations like Bank of America, Pico Energy, Comcast, and Facebook donating over $1 million each. Their lobbyists were everywhere and filled the VIP suites. This type of corporate sponsorship is a corrupting influence and must end if politicians are going to represent the American people.
Mm-hmm.
As the Democratic nominee, Bernie will ban corporate contributions to the Democratic Party convention and all related committees. As president, Bernie will update and strengthen the Federal Election Campaign Act to return to a system of mandatory public funding for national party conventions. Additionally, he plans to pass a constitutional amendment that makes clear that money is not speech. Corporations are not people.
Yes.
Additionally, we're going to overturn Citizens United, which
Yes.
allows corporations to spend unlimited money on elections. Just as Bernie said recently, we too must be more than ready to take on the greed and corruption of the corporate elite and their apologists.
Mm-hmm.
Bernie has specific step-by-step plans that will ensure and protect our local community's future economic prosperity. For instance, his plan to legalize marijuana by executive order within his first 100 days and then vacate and expunge all past marijuana-related convictions. He further plans to institute market share and franchise caps to prevent consolidation and profiteering, ban tobacco and cigarette corporations from participating in the industry at all, and incentivize marijuana businesses by providing federal resources to be structured like cooperative and collective nonprofits that will create jobs and economic growth in local communities. Consider for a moment the profound impact that this plan could have on our community here in Mendocino County alone. One of my many personal favorites, his workplace democracy plan, a plan which will, among many other things, make it easier to form a union. Give federal workers the right to strike, eliminate the right to work, which has been disastrous for unions, and deny federal contracts to employers that pay poverty wages, outsource jobs overseas, engage in union busting, deny good benefits, and pay their CEOs outrageous compensation packages.
Here, here.
Again, deny federal contracts. I should also at least mention the Green New Deal, Medicare for all, eliminating student debt,
Yes.
but I'm going to leave it there because you're probably familiar with those already and we could be here all night.
Yep.
If you haven't already, familiarize yourself with all of the great plans on the issues section of the campaign website. These are just a small sampling of the great vision that Bernie Sanders has for the betterment of our society. As you well know, Bernie Sanders has plans to address the profound dysfunction in this country, and we have the opportunity to lift him up towards that goal. We must not falter in this endeavor. The adversity that we face is of epic proportions. The immensity and the immediacy of the climate crisis. The suffering and desperation of our most marginalized peoples. The explosive and violent hatred of the far right. Change must come, and it must come swiftly. We must effect this change. We must do our very best to help Bernie Sanders win this race. We need him, and he needs us. He needs us to speak with people we know and people we don't know, to get the word out about what his movement is trying to accomplish, what we are trying to accomplish. He needs us to sign up for and engage in tabling, canvassing, phone banking, and solidarity events for the campaign. This is a grassroots movement. If it's going to succeed, we have to participate. We must engage in fearless dialogue. We must stand up publicly and with pride for what is right and for what is just. We must change the way that we value our environment and our people, the very basis of our prosperity. As a society and as individuals, we must reevaluate that which motivates us. We must reorient ourselves towards collective good. We must exert influence when and where we can. We must change the way we view the purpose of our economy. We must change the way we regulate the private sector. We must change the way we provide for the common good. We must answer this most pressing of questions. How do we effectively incentivize the leaders of business and industry to do the right thing, to operate in ethical and sustainable ways that enrich the communities that they operate in? As Franklin Delano Roosevelt once said, we must especially beware of that small group of selfish men who would clip the wings of the American eagle in order to feather their own nests. I say, we must publicly identify this small group and let the cold and cannibalistic nature of their predation be widely and clearly known so that they may be judged accordingly for their crimes. Even the Catholic Church, through Pope Francis, has joined in the condemnation with his strong statements against unfettered capitalism. Excuse me. Money has to serve, not to rule, he said, and he continued thus. We have created new idols. The golden calf of old has found a new and heartless image in the cult of money and the dictatorship of an economy which is faceless and lacking any truly humane goal. Our acceptance of money's power over ourselves and our society creates a gravely deficient human perspective, which reduces man to one of his needs alone, namely consumption. We have begun this culture of disposal, where human beings themselves are nowadays considered as consumer goods, which can be used up and thrown away. Ideologies which uphold the absolute autonomy of markets and financial speculation, and thus deny the right of control to the state, which are themselves charged with providing for the common good. So, we must change how we organize our society and determine its collective goals, its values, and its very purpose. We desire this change because it is absolutely necessary. Because we have a situation now where private business and industrial interests have so hijacked our governmental and economic systems and perverted them as to almost exclusively serve their needs as their new functions. To this end, those who hold the majority of the wealth and the means of production in our society have waged a campaign to steadily gut the rights and protections of workers and of the many for the short-term profits of the few. So we now find ourselves in quite a mess. There are those who labor and those who profit, those who struggle in desperation and those who prosper in decadence. We must reprioritize our consideration between these groups. I say, towards the group that could actually use some help. As Abraham Lincoln once said, labor is prior to and independent of capital. Capital is only the fruit of labor, and could never have existed if labor had not first existed. Labor is the superior of capital, and deserves much higher the consideration.
Yep.
All right.
Our culture has devolved such that untold numbers of our people are suffering in desperation, and yet we prioritize the needs of those with the most. We celebrate material accumulation, and individual enrichment seems to be our collective motivation. Furthermore, Our total severance from the reality that is our great inherited debt to the collective and to the shoulders upon which we all have stood. This and the persistent suppression of our most basic need to commune and collaborate with our fellow human fuels our culture's perverse fantasy of hyper-individualization. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but despite what you may think, no, you have not done everything all on your own. No, you have not achieved success in a vacuum. Yes, you owe a great debt to the collective that afforded you the opportunity for your individual prosperity. Yes, your contributions to your society should be at least proportional to the percentage of that society's wealth and power that you possess as an individual. In simple terms, if you have somehow devised a scheme by which you can extract, amass, and hoard 50% of a society's entire wealth, then you should be responsible for contributing at least 50% of that society's entire budget. Period.
Here, here.
Woo!
Absolutely.
The looting of our collective wealth, the plundering of our earth, and the jeopardization of our future by the prosperous few is a grotesque display of human avarice, cruelty, selfishness, and indifference. How much wealth is enough? It literally cannot continue. We will no longer be passively complicit. We simply will not stand for it. Separation, cynicism, and indifference are the lubricants for the great and terrible machinery of extraction and exploitation, and our pitiful acceptance of our dependence to that machinery are our chains. But do not despair. Take hope. Our movement is gaining momentum. Our campaign recently organized a rally in Queens that drew a reported 30,000 people, making it the single largest campaign event of any candidate thus far.
Woo.
Despite
Go Bernie.
Yeah.
Go Bernie.
And Iowa,
Yeah, in Iowa. Yeah,
the biggest turnout for in the Dems.
yeah.
Ever.
It was good to see.
Good.
Yeah, with AOC
And
by
it
his
was
side.
AOC and Bernie.
Today?
Despite the seemingly near-complete media blackout, some in the mainstream media even called Bernie Sanders the winner of the most recent debate. Additionally, Bernie Sanders' campaign has recently enjoyed a string of highly influential and beneficial endorsements. Michael Moore said recently at a rally, "What do the pundits say? Bernie's too old." Oh yeah? Well, I say here's what's too old. The Electoral College.
Yep.
That's too old.
Yep.
A $7.25 minimum wage. That's too old.
Yep.
Crushing student debt is too old.
Yep.
The gender pay gap is too old.
Yep.
High deductibles for health insurance. Super delegates. The fossil fuel industry. Those are too old.
Yep.
Amen.
Bernie's age is a gift.
Yep.
He has seen a great many things. I am glad he is his age. We will benefit from his wisdom, from his experience, from his knowledge, and from his love for the American people. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said recently at her endorsement speech that, quote, "It wasn't until I heard of a man by the name of Bernie Sanders that I began to question, assert, and recognize my inherent value as a human being, one that deserves health care, housing, education, and a living wage. We have to change the fundamental logic of a system and a politics that puts corporate profit ahead of all human and planetary costs."
Absolutely.
Let's rewind the story. When I was a baby, AOC, my family relied on Planned Parenthood for prenatal care. Then Bernie Sanders fought for me. When I was growing up and education was being gutted for kids in the quote-unquote wrong zip code, then Bernie Sanders fought for us. When I was a child that relied on chips so that I could see the doctor, Bernie Sanders fought for a single-payer healthcare system. When the federal government decided to discriminate and abandon my queer family and friends, Bernie Sanders was putting his career on the line for us. When I was a waitress, and it was time for me to graduate college with student debt, Bernie Sanders was one of the only ones that said that no person should be graduating with life-crushing debt at the very start of their working lives.
Yep.
Bernie Sanders did not do these things because they were popular. That is what we need to remember. He did this and he fought for these aims and to these ends when they came at the highest political cost in America. Nobody wanted to question this system, and in 2016, he fundamentally changed politics in this country. I'm proud to say that the only reason that I had any hope in launching a long-shot campaign for Congress is because Bernie Sanders proved that you can run a grassroots campaign and win in an America where we almost thought it wasn't possible anymore.
Yep.
Unquote. Senator Nina Turner said, "If nothing fundamentally changes for multimillionaires and for billionaires, then nothing fundamentally changes for you, and you, and you, and you, and you."
That's right.
I hail from a tradition that says that you will know the tree by the fruit that it bears. and Bernie Sanders bears good fruit.
Yep. The real deal.
I must say I agree with Pope Francis, Michael, Alexandria, Nina, and Abraham Lincoln.
Same.
Now is a great pivotal time in history. We find ourselves at a juncture of great import for our species and for our entire planet. The direction that we choose to go at this moment will have profound consequences that will reverberate through the annals of human history and for generations to come. This is not a time to be afraid of change. This is a time to be bold. Saying that you support something is not the same as fighting for it. As the Bernie Sanders campaign states, change will never come without political participation. And so I say, let us be creative and persistent in our participation. Let us be fearless in our efforts and unwavering in our commitment to the good of us all. When this opportunity passes, how will you assess your contribution? Will you be satisfied that you did enough? Will you think that if we could do it all again, that we would be louder this time, that we would try harder, that it was worth it? When that door is shut, will we wish that we could go back through it? If things get away from us in this election, and further out of our hands generally, as we stand amidst the rubble of the world that could have been, will we at least have the pride in knowing that we did everything that we possibly could have? The climate crisis paints a dire scene. The future is unknowable. What can our species achieve if we give ourselves and each other the opportunity? Those of us living today, given the opportunity to make a difference, what will our legacy be? Perhaps none of us will ever know if we did enough with the time that we were given. Perhaps that is a question only future generations will ever be able to know the answer to. What will they say to each other when they speak of us and of our time? As we consider our world and our position in it at this moment, we must ask ourselves another question of fundamental importance. Will you fight for somebody you don't know? For somebody you may never meet? As Bernie says, are you willing to fight for that person who you don't know as much as you're willing to fight for yourself? Are you willing to stand together and fight for those people who are struggling economically in this country? Are you willing to fight for young people drowning in student debt, even if you are not?
Yes. Absolutely.
Thank you.
For all of it. All of it.
Are you willing to fight? Are you willing to fight to ensure that every American has health care as a human right, even if you have good health care?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes. Are you willing to fight for frightened immigrant neighbors,
Yes.
even if you are native born?
Yes.
Heck yeah.
Are you willing to fight for a future for generations of people who have not yet even been born, but who are entitled to live in a healthy and habitable planet?
Yes.
Yes.
Because if you are willing to do that, if you are willing to love, if you are willing to fight for a government of compassion and justice and decency, if you are willing to stand up to Trump's desire to divide us up, if you are prepared to stand up to the greed and corruption of the corporate elite, if you and millions of others are prepared to do that, then there is no doubt in my mind that we will not only win this election, but together we will transform this country.
Woo!
Right.
I too ask, is it even possible to place too high a value on a human life? Can we show that we actually care through our actions right now for our fellow human? Or will we falter? Will we give in to fear and complacency? Will we succumb to hyper-individualism and selfishness like so many of our peers? Will we fall victim to propaganda and peer pressure? Will we be seduced by comfort and convenience? Will we never appropriately value the collective and our role within it? Or will we come together and make a stand for what is right and what is just? Will we have the courage and the tenacity to triumph? Only together, only boldly and without fear. More worthy a fight we have not yet seen before us. Let not our inaction and our indifference be a weapon in the arsenal of tyranny. Rise up and exert the influence that is your individual power. Be not afraid, for fortune favors the bold. Be not uncertain, for the struggle is worth the sweat. Talk to your community about the issues we are facing and also about our collective wealth, power, and shared destiny. Join the movement to secure a dignified life for everyone living in this country. Join Bernie Sanders. And remember,
Yes.
not me.
Us!
Before I finish, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I know, I got another one. Before I finish talking you all to death, I must now urge you all to please contribute directly to the campaign. Talk with people you know and people you don't know about why you support Bernie Sanders. Volunteer on your own or with one of the many local groups already up and running, such as our local group, Mendocino Coast for Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Woo! or wonderful Team Bernie Ukiah, who are also here tonight, or even start your own group. Just know that every single hour that you volunteer is an investment in our future. Also, please check out our Bernie swag table, where we have all the campaign stuff you'll need, and know that every single thing on this table is sourced American Union made.
Yay!
I also want to give a quick shout out to Hidden Treasures T-shirt company here in Fort Bragg. They did beautiful work on our custom printing.
Where are they?
They're on off Franklin, off of Mitchell Creek.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, there you are. I was like, where does that come from? Okay, so Mendocino Coast for Bernie Sanders is looking for volunteers. We have sign-up sheets right here.
And a
For-
Facebook page.
And a Facebook page. Yes.
Mendocino Coast for Bernie Sanders. Put
Check
your
it
posts
out.
on there.
Share it, please. Yeah.
Mendocino Coast.
Yes. Mendocino
Bernie
Coast
Sanders.
for Bernie Sanders. Thank you, Andy. So
Sign
we
up
have
for the other Mendocino group too.
join that one too.
Yeah, there's the inland group. It's,
Yes.
Yes, the inland group. Yes.
Join them all. It's
Yeah,
solidarity.
join them all. Santa
Solidarity.
Cruz for Bernie Sanders.
So we have sign-up sheets for our upcoming January phone banking drive and February canvassing drive. This is our final chance to make a push, right? Before March 3rd. Also a sign-up for those brave souls who might be interested in helping us fill the first shifts at a new regular tabling spot in Fort Bragg. Anyone who might be interested in that.
Cool. Where are you going to do that?
We're open to suggestions.
Okay.
We'll figure that out together. Yeah. But I'm thinking like maybe in front of City Hall, like right there next to Laurel. There's a lot of auto traffic.
Town
and
Hall.
all that.
Town
Town Hall,
At your
thank you.
farmer's market. At your farmer's market.
Farmers Market's another good spot.
You can't do
We
farmers
have to
market.
Yeah, there's
outside
the
of-
political stuff.
There's
Thank you,
no,
Leslie.
Yeah, no political
No
stuff.
politics.
Okay.
But you
Now you
So
can
town hall.
do registration to vote, but you can't. They won't allow any specific
Got it.
political.
But you
Okay.
can be off to the side.
I could probably wear my
Yes.
Bernie shirt while I register people.
We do it we do it at the Ukiah Farmers Market. Put off to the side.
Right.
So we are a growing group. Please come as you are and bring your unique talents to this grassroots organizing effort. Please feel free to approach me sometime this evening for details regarding upcoming local actions or any questions at all. I also want to give a very special thanks to Cal Winslow and to Faith Simon for organizing and hosting this wonderful talk gathering.
Thank you, guys.
If we are going to be effective organizers, we have to meet.
Yes.
And again, hopefully.
Yeah,
So-
this is awesome. Being
Yeah.
with all you guys.
It is. It really is. Yeah.
And girls.
So thank you so much,
And
Cal and
dogs.
Faith. Yeah. And thank you, Steve, for making the drive up
Yeah.
here. Yeah, really appreciate that.
Privilege.
Now, finally, and most importantly, please register as a Democrat and vote for Bernie Sanders in the California Democratic primary on March 3rd, 2020. And together, let's do what's best for our people, for our planet, and for our posterity. Thank you. Power to the people.
Well, that is
Not yet.
going to be very difficult to follow up on. But I just thought I would make two suggestions. One, that if people can make some practical suggestions about what we can do.
Mhm.
Two, I'm wondering, Susan, could you give us a brief report from inland?
And Ruth is here. Ruth's the chair. And I'm like the vice chair.